So welcome to my TED Talk. I've actually always wanted to say that. So my talk today is Higher Ed While Black. And the story that I'm going to share is my story, but it's also the story of so many Black and Latinx students when they get to college campuses. So this right here represents my story. So I was born and raised in the Bronx. And I went to school with people, for the most part, who looked like me. It's what I was used to, it's what I knew. Black students, Latinx students, it's what I was accustomed to. So when I was in school, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to study. When I was in high school, I had no idea. But I knew I wanted to make a bunch of money. So I used to see Chappelle there clutching money. So I didn't do a lot of research, right, in terms of schools or anything like that. But my mom told me when I was a senior in high school, she gave me two options. She said, you can either go to college or you can go to college. So I did not want to choose homelessness, so I went to college. My mom was actually in the front row. So I ended up going to Fordham University because it was near my house. It was close. I didn't do any research. I didn't really look into it. I actually didn't even really visit campus until after I was accepted. But I heard it was a good school, whatever that means. So I decided to go. So I'm going to share some stats with you. These are really important numbers. So this is from a study from Dr. Marshall Anthony. It's called Raising Undergraduate Degree Attainment. All right? So 65% of all jobs are going to require some type of credential, right? So that means either a degree or a certification, something. It means after high school, you have to do something in order to get these jobs. 24.3% of Black men in this country have some college with no degree. And that's a particular scary stat because that means these people are going to college, these young men are going to school, probably incurring some debt, but not finishing. So that's the worst thing you can do, going and not finishing, because now you have this debt, right? Last but not least, only 26.6% of Black men have a college degree. That's a particularly scary number. So this is the landscape that we're looking at things through. So I'm a senior in high school. These numbers said I have to do something after. I decided to go to Fordham University. So I like to document things. So I literally have a picture of my very first day on campus at Fordham University. I didn't know I was going to use it for this TED Talk many years later, but I have it here and I want to share it with y'all. This is my very first day of campus. Okay. So I see some people laughing. So I guess y'all are in on the joke that is in fact not me. That is Daniel Kaluuya in the movie Get Out. But I share that for a very particular reason. So if you look at his face, you can see he's smiling, but it's a very uncomfortable smile. He looks nervous. He looks like, why am I here? And that was a lot of my experience at Fordham University. So Fordham University is a predominantly white institution. So in some of my classes, I was the only Black student. I remember distinctly there were a few times when I was in the cafeteria, and I looked around in a cafeteria of hundreds, and it was literally just me there. And I didn't have the feelings to be able to kind of describe what I was going through. I didn't have the words, or the verbiage, or any of it. So there is an emotional toll that some students can feel when they're on these campuses. I didn't have the emotional language. So people would ask me how I was feeling during my freshman year, and I would say things like, I'm chilling, I'm fine, I'm good. There are a couple reasons why I would give those answers. One, I didn't necessarily think people really cared. And also, it was easy to say that. It was easy to say, I'm good, I'm chilling, I'm fine. It was harder to do the emotional work of really thinking about how I was actually feeling. I also don't think I had the emotional toolbox to be able to break down what the words were. On campus sometimes, students of color, Black and Latinx students, can be made to feel like they're not wanted, like they don't belong there. I have a couple of quotes that I want to share. These are actual quotes that I experienced while I was there. So I had two roommates during my freshman year. One of them was from Long Island. The other one was from Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, a place that I hope that I never end up in. But it was Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. So the quote was, and this is what they asked me, they said, do you people really feel uncomfortable on campus? So you people, meaning Black students, right? That was a question that was actually asked. And I was angry and I was upset, didn't know how to deal with it, but I was asked, do you people really feel uncomfortable on campus? And that was from students, so people my age. This one's a little scary, it's from a professor. Which sports team do you play for? So I'm about 5'9", Although on my ID I put 5'11", because you get to choose. In actuality, I'm 5'9", and I probably gained maybe about 25 pounds since graduating college. But when I was in college, I probably weighed 160. So 5'9", 160, what team do you think maybe bowling, right? I didn't play for any team. But, again, the professor assumed that I had to have been an athlete. I couldn't have gotten into Fordham University based on just my brain, right? It had to be, I played for some sport, and there's nothing wrong with being an athlete. But for the professor to just assume that that was my entry point was problematic. So there is an emotional toll. There's also the academic preparedness piece. So you could be, sometimes as a Black or Latinx student, coming from a school where you didn't read some of the same texts that some of your counterparts read who came from more elite private schools. You might not have seen yourself in the literature that you're reading, so you might be turned off altogether. So you might be going into classes and you're like, I don't know if I can compete with the person to my left and my right. I don't know if I belong here. Which leads to something called anti-intellectualism, which is a really long word, 8 syllables, I counted it before this. And it's this idea that sometimes Black and brown students don't see themselves as lifelong learners. I don't see myself as a person who can compete in a class. I'm looking at this degree as something to get through, which was something that I went through when I was at Fordham. So I remember there was a class called the Black Athlete. So my friends were all taking it. We lived in a house together, there were 5 of us. We all decided to take this class called the Black Athlete. I was like, I like Black people, I like athletes, this is gonna be great. The first day, the professor gives me a syllabus, and the syllabus said, at the end of this class, you have to write a 15-page paper. So I quick, fast, and in a hurry, dropped that class. And I'm not saying this as something I'm proud of today. In fact, it's something I'm very embarrassed about today. But at the time, seeing myself writing that paper, I was like, there has to be an easier route to this degree. So again, this idea of anti-intellectualism, running from things, and something I would have enjoyed now, get me to write a page about athletes for 15 pages, yeah, I'll do it. Because again, I have the understanding of why it matters to push yourself. But at that time, I didn't see the value in it. So what do we do? These are complex situations. These are complex issues. They weren't created overnight, but what are we going to do to fix some of these things? So I see some high school students in the building. Make some noise for my high school students. Here are my thoughts, especially to my high school educators. We need to be talking to our students about what it's like when they get to campus. And not just the academic piece. So we need to talk to them about what type of grades you need to get in and all of that. That's great. Y'all are already doing that. That's amazing. But we also need to talk about the social and emotional toll that sometimes happens on some of these campuses. To my college folks, my college administrators, I want y'all to hear this as well. Sometimes there's a segment of your population who don't necessarily feel included on campus. And that's not everywhere, that's not everyone, but we have to acknowledge that. There are some students who don't feel like they belong. What are we doing to reach them? So that's my high school folks, my college folks, and most importantly, the students. Here's what you can be doing. Building emotional competencies is one of the biggest things, one of the most important things that I had to do. So I had to find a space on campus where I felt like I could be my most authentic self. And that could be any place. For some of my athletes, maybe it's the athletics department. Maybe it is the HOP office. Maybe it is community service office. It could be any number of things, but finding a place where you can be yourself and you don't have to worry. Another big one, practice using feeling words. When I was in college, I probably could have named maybe, if I pushed myself, maybe 8 or 10 feelings. So someone actually gave me a paper and it showed me there were over 65 feeling words on the paper. And I studied it, right? And I was able to start to say, I feel like, not I think, not I know, but I feel. Practicing that. As young men, we're sometimes not socialized to lock in with our feelings. How do you feel? Check in with your friends. Check in with your friends and ask your friends how they're doing. It's something that I still do to this day. One of my best friends, what up, Jason? Jason Acosta is in the building. We check on each other. How do you feel? He's actually really good about that. And lastly, it is okay to not be okay. It's not okay to stay there. but it's okay to not be okay. It is okay to seek therapy. A lot of us probably need therapy. If I look back to my freshman year, I was probably a little bit depressed. At the time, I wouldn't have acknowledged that, but it's okay to seek therapy, and a lot of us probably do. Representation matters. Find someone on campus who you can identify. Find someone who looks like you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a professor. It's great if it is. But for me, I had a security guard during my junior and senior year named Bert Scipio. This 6'5" black dude who was one of my biggest mentors ever. And he was a security guard there. But I would go to him whenever I had a question. And he didn't always know all of the academic-y things, but he would always point me in the right direction. So I'd ask him a question, and usually, especially if it was school-related, he would usually say, "Did you ask your professor?" I would usually say no. And he would usually say, "You should go do that." And he was always right. So asking for mentorship. Like I said, it doesn't have to be your professor. Also take classes to learn about your history. You're paying a lot of money to be on these campuses. A lot of times they will have a Latinx American history class, a Black American history class. Take some of those classes. So finding affirming spaces on campus, wherever that is, be in touch with the multicultural office, join a club. If they don't have clubs that you're interested in, start a club. And this is the most important thing that I want to leave you all with, especially to my young people, especially to my students, especially to my Black and Latinx students in the room. You belong. You matter. You belong on that campus. So college admissions folks have really, really complex metrics to decide who's going to get in and who's not. Once they accept you, that means you belong on that campus. That means they've determined that you have the ability to graduate from that campus. So you belong there. But on the flip side of that, if while you were there, you were realizing that I'm experiencing way too much trauma, I don't want to be here, it is okay to change your mind. It is okay to go in a different direction. It is okay to transfer. But you didn't transfer because you were defeated. You didn't transfer because you didn't belong. You transferred because you changed your mind. And that's okay. So last, this is who we do it for. So these are some of my actual students who I've worked with over the course of my career. And in this picture alone, I have master's degrees. I have people working in the fields. I have people doing all these different professions. And it is really exciting. And this is why I do the work. And this is why the work matters. And this is why each of you in here matters. Thank you so much.